So, my name is Zach Pickens. I'm the farm manager at River Park Farm. So, actually, just real quick, I think it's interesting, 596 acres is really taking care of like, the public land situation. And that's pretty major, but another thing that we want people to think about is stalled construction sites. There are over 600 stalled construction sites in the city, and that's a big chunk of space. So, one thing that I've really come to realize, being involved in urban agriculture for the past 5 years, I started thinking about like rooftops. Oh, there's so many rooftops. Well, yeah, but there's so many other plots of lands around the city, and I think, land is the biggest problem in urban agriculture. Like access to space is definitely the biggest challenge. So when people ask me like, well, what's your biggest challenge? It's like, well, not getting kicked off of our property. So I want to talk a bit about that, and then get in the history and everything, and then challenges. But so this is a shot of the farm. This is right by Bellevue Hospital. 29th Street and 1st Avenue is where our farm is located. River Park Farm it's essentially a project of River Park Restaurant. So the restaurant itself is in this big tower. That big tower is one of what was supposed to be two that were built at the same time. That part of the Alexandria Alexandria Life Sciences Center. So it's a big bioscience research campus. Eventually they're going to build 3 towers just like that first one. Our farm was situated on the footprint of the second tower. When the economy collapsed in 2008, the developer had enough money to finish the first building, get tenants in it, and raise money to finish the second. So what they did is they went to the city, just like over 600 other developers at the time, and they got special status from the city. This is something that the city had never done before. It's called stalled site status. What that means is, you ran out of money because the economy collapsed. You don't want to lose your building permits because it costs thousands of dollars. It costs legal fees. Like it's really expensive and arduous to get back, to building. So the city allowed people to say, okay, your stalled site, there were certain restrictions, like you had to be able to see the site, this and that. But this is what the site used to look like before they started building. This is them doing the initial clearing. It was like a tire dump. So it was really just unremarkable, pretty like wasted space right there beside. This is the old Bellevue Psych Ward right there. Can you switch that one? Mm-hmm. That's the stalled site in 2010. So we actually had access to a full acre. We worked out a deal with our landlord, the chef, and one of the co-owners. They were interested in growing food for the restaurant. They saw this space there and they said, well, hey, is there any chance of us using it? And so we actually worked out a partnership with the landlord whereby, they were going to let us use this space until they started building. So the trick is like, okay, how long are we going to be there, and how do you build a farm that makes sense for a temporary space? You can switch through a couple of these pretty quick. So this is what happened is we actually we're a mobile farm. So everything that we grow on is a milk crate. We have 3,500 milk crate planters. They're double stacked to allow for aeration. That's another shot of the farm. And you can actually see like the girdles for the beams. Like this thing's ready to go. They really just like finished the foundation and then it was stalled. So really fortunately, there wasn't any structure built for us, so there was no sunlight blocking or anything like that. It was really just a flat open expanse of space. It's a full acre, and we were using about half of it. You can switch through. This is the design. It's so simple. Like this has been in community gardens and people's backyards for a long time. But because it's a mobile farm, we needed something that was transportable. We needed something that was relatively easy to move for one person, and also made sense for a wide range of vegetable and fruit production. So, this is a perfect cubic foot, which is as much as you need for tomatoes, eggplants, whatever. The only things we really don't grow are large vining plants just because of lateral space. So we don't grow a lot of winter squash. We grew some watermelons, but in different containers this year. And really what all we have going on here is the milk crate and landscape fabric. This is, take a 3-foot roll of landscape fabric, cut a 3-foot piece, cut out the corners, kind of like, you know, Swiss flag kind of thing, and then sink it in, and that'll form the sides, and then what we did was then just roll back part of the top and staple it in place. And that's it. And it's ready to go. We don't need like a drainage layer, we don't need, you know, like gravel or anything like that. And we use a pretty basic potting mix for our medium. So, you know, in that way, it's good for the application. You know, I said what we were on this site, we actually had to move. So October of this year, we picked everything up, put it on pallets, and it's in storage right now. And the upside of this whole thing, and I think it's a really positive development, is that the landlord liked it so much, and they benefited a lot, like PR-wise and everything like that. So that's the upside for them, right? So if it's good for them, I don't care how it's good for them. Like, it's good for them, it's good for me. So they actually liked it so much, they want to keep it going. So they've found another space on the campus that they're going to allow us to set up the farm, and actually a little more permanent capacity. They're going to deck out part of a public promenade that exists and let us use it. So so that's what that looks like. You can switch through there. So, you know, this is a pretty atypical way to farm, and that's something that I've been concentrating on a lot is tool development and just you know, appropriate processes. Because everything I do, I have to do it 3,500 times, right? I can't till a bed. I have to like do each container one at a time, you know, and that's a major challenge that I'm going to get to. So that means that I had to, you know, we got to be smart about like how we do our actions. Like hand seeding is not going to work, right? So like if I have to do that 35, I think you can switch to the slide. If you got, switch through here. Okay. Oh, I'll talk about this real quick. So this is more on the mobile modular side of things. Last winter we grew through the winter. We just planted season-appropriate crops, so carrots, spinach, arugula, radish, beets. Because we have these double-stacked milk crates with all these nice holes on them, we actually bent half-inch electrical conduit into hoops and just simply zip tied them to the side of the crates, and we set up low tunnels. And the best part about it is that it was such a low footprint. All we had to do is snap off the zip ties at the end of the winter and stack them up and store them. So it was really I mean, I'm not saying it was an easy setup. It still took a long time, but at the same time, like it was pretty. You know, a simple construction. It was rigid. None of them collapsed. We actually grew pretty successfully through the winter. I mean, we could have done it without the cover, to be honest, but it definitely helped. We were harvesting things probably a month earlier than we would have without the cover. So if we had planted spinach in September, we were harvesting it in January instead of February. And that was nice to have a connection to like fresh produce through the winter. Oh, I must have taken out some of the slides. I'm going to talk about this real quick. This is a basic tool adaptation, but like one that's really important for me. So like this is something you can get at Johnny's, which is a farm, you know, seed supplier and whatever. This is a 4-row pinpoint seeder. Usually it's on a long pole because you'd be in a field dragging this behind you as you're walking down the bed. I can't do that, so basically what I did is I took a handle off of the old hand cultivator that had broken, and so now this is handheld, and I altered it so it fits perfectly inside the milk crate, and I can see, you know, efficiently lettuces, carrots, radish, those type of things, and I can do it quickly. I mean, it probably takes me 1/10 of the time that it would have done it to do it by hand. And that's something that this still doesn't fit perfectly because the way the landscape fabric fits in the box, it still kind of catches sometimes, and so it's still like a work in progress. But I'm open to ideas on efficient seeding for a setup like this, where I I have a foot board. You know, every foot I've got a plastic barrier to keep me from like just dragging a piece of equipment through. So it's just something, you know, like I said, it's highly repetitive motions. Just real quick, the kitchen is amazing. The chef loves this farm to death, which makes my job a lot easier. Because if I tell him something doesn't work, he lets me tell him that. You know, he doesn't. Yes. There's a lot of people I've found that are like, well, why doesn't that grow? You know, like, why doesn't that grow in containers? It's like, well, you need 6 foot of depth or something like that. You know, and they're really flexible. They're really excited about just, you know, learning more about the farm. So we actually do farm walks with them. Like in the summer, in the main growing season, once a day the chef comes out and I tell them what's fresh and what's ready. The best part about the setup though is the farm planning. It was very collaborative. What we did was I started by giving the chefs and the sous chefs seed catalogs and just having them circle what they wanted. They gave me a full laundry list, you know, like a wish list, and I came back and you know, shrunk it down in terms of like what's appropriate, what we're going to get the best yield from, all of that. So it really was like a collaborative process with the kitchen, and that's like a chef's dream, is to have things like grown to spec just for them. So the last slide is just like, oh, skip the food porn. Oh well. That's contact info. But, you know, because I think mobility is really crucial for us because, you know, we're on a stalled construction site and there's no guarantee that where we're going to be is going to, you know, in the future will be permanent. So we have to stay kind of light on our toes a little bit. So the milk crates are here to stay. So what that means is it's very, the main challenges actually are the mobility is a blessing and a curse, because when it comes to like us moving these containers, tracking is a major issue. Like to do a proper crop rotation in containers like this is very difficult. At any time that anybody touches these things other than myself, because I'm the only full-time employee, and we have some of the line cooks come out and work 2 hours of their weekly shift will be on the farm, and we have a couple interns. I've got a part-time assistant during the main growing season, but you know, for the most part, I'm the one that's always on the farm. And if things get moved around, because we can pick up each individual container and move it around. If I say, oh, move that bed over here or something like that, and things get disorganized, I might not know what was actually in that soil. You know, I might, you know, I don't have a tracking system for each individual container as far as like, was there a diseased tomato plant in that container last season that I'm about to plant a tomato plant in? I don't know. You know, so we worked on, you know, we tried initially to, with a numerical system, like tag each crate based on a planting group of 16. 16 containers is about what fits on a standard pallet. So we figured, all right, so what fits on a pallet, we'll call that a planting group. And then, you know, we had broken it down. It was really clunky, and again, once the numbers got, it was like things would just get lost. You know, if one thing got moved, it was just gone, and that planting group was not full. So I adapted it to make it a little more rudimentary this past year, whereby we would just have a 3-year rotation using color coding. So we would, you know, I was using nightshades and main season crops as my pinpoint, and saying, all right, tomatoes are definitely things that I don't want to plant in the same container at least for 3 years. So everything this past growing season that was a nightshade or okra or sunflowers, like really heavy feeding crops, we labeled with a red dot with a wax marker. And then everything that was a tomato, nightshade, all that last year, we labeled with a yellow dot. And then everything else was a white dot. The problem was, again, like now with storage, like we've got those dots on all different pallets, and I don't know what was a tomato and what was a pepper, and that makes a big difference in terms of like what disease may be present in the soil or what may be affecting future crops. We had a lot of problems with fungus in our tomatoes this year, so it's really important that I know like where that soil is. I mean, ultimately, right, the best thing to do would be just dump it out and start over, but I don't want to do So I've been building this soil quality for the past 2 years, and I don't want to lose that. So yeah, that's another thing. Another major challenge is the soil itself with container farming, which is such a crazy combination of words. Growing in containers, you have to use a very specific medium, right? You can't just use compost, you can't just use like regular topsoil or anything like that. Because of root compaction in the containers, it has to be light, it has to be airy. You have to use things like peat moss or coconut coir to allow air and water to pass through more easily. So, that means you're sacrificing nutrient sources for the plants. So it really is a balance between, the health of the plant through nutrient uptake and the health of the plant through, root access.
So you're saying you're building the fertility of these boxes. Are you using compost tea, or what's your primary feeding method?
So let me say it this way: we started with a greenhouse mix. So another farmer helped start the project. He's a big greenhouse grower, and he said, well, what I know about containers is this, and it's a sterile greenhouse mix which had no no life in it, no nutrients really, except for 20-20-20 fertilizer. So
it's conventional. It's not organic.
I'm keeping it organic. It would never be certified that way, but I'm using 100% organic practices.
Okay.
So what I've been doing, my challenge has been to work in enough compost to kind of change the ratio in that soil, and also to build up life, build bacterial levels and fungus levels. And I'll get to that in a second about why that's a challenge. But I'm using compost teas for foliar, and I'm learning more about that and knowing that I need to be using it for soil drench more. Because compost tea, when you brew it, you can really expand the power of 1 pound of compost into hundreds of square feet of coverage for that beneficial bacteria. That's a big part of it. I think liquid fertilizers are probably a good call, but finding a good one has been hard because fish fertilizer smells terrible, and this is in a very public space that. Especially if you think about connected to a restaurant, I can't have stank fish all over the farm where people are eating. So, I don't know if you have any recommendations other than that.
Fish is a good idea.
Yeah.
You can make your own fish from the scraps from the restaurant.
There you go. Oh. I need a non in your face liquid fertilizer. That's my only challenge. Because you can see
or
where we
do
have
an inline drip. If you're going to reinstall your whole farm, you could put a drip line through the bottom of all of them.
Yeah.
And then have it be water fed.
So the challenge is then it's not mobile because they're all connected by a line. So that's where I get tied up.
How about stone dust?
Connectorized line.
Oh, what?
What did he say? Connectorized line. In other words, there's some sort of a connector that goes from cube to cube to cube.
Yeah.
The cubes are all coupled together.
They commit to you on a season basis, though, right? I mean, that if in April you plant, that you'll be there in October.
Yeah, and that's something that we kind of knew that. We had no guarantee that they were going to not build their multi-million-dollar building and take the multi-$1,000 farm off of there immediately, But that was kind of the understanding, right? So, but the big challenge is that we were moving things around, as they came into season. We were kind of moving things into more visible spaces, and that's something we might just not do next year. Right? So then if I can keep the containers in place and not move them around, then yeah, I could, potentially if it's there for 9 months, then adding a little infrastructure would be good. So the drip would, we've talked about running main lines that have emitters off of small tubes that would then rest in between 4 boxes, and then it'd be like a sprinkler setup almost. I just with regular drip tape though. I wonder about we've got the landscape fabric. I can't go through the landscape fabric of each of these boxes.
No, you could do poly pipe underneath, like orchard pipe, and then have the mini tubes and then micro emitters, little mini sprayers.
Yeah.
So, like I was approaching like an orchard.
Okay.
But they're paying you. I mean, sorry, but are they paying you like a salary?
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is actually like you could be running multiple, rearranging the cabbages and like you basically landscaping for them.
I mean, that's not part of it, I mean, if you see the space, like we have a private like dining table there and everything, like it needs to be nice, right? And so behind the wall, that's where we're doing all of our seating. That's where we're doing, a lot of like the behind the scenes work or whatever. But at the end of the day, this is a productive farm. I mean, this is all this food. We harvested thousands of pounds of produce that went to the kitchen. Yeah.
Have you thought about the application for this model for brownfield sites? Because I know a lot of developers are hesitant to even to sell the property because they're worried about liability. So anything that breaks ground is like off limits.
Yeah, but I mean that's something that I've been really trying to get out to people is that I see this as a model for temporary space and like especially like brownfields because you don't want to be in the dirt. Now okay, I think that's all my major problems, but that, I think making a better mobile system is another challenge of mine because this is highly repetitive with the cubic foot each. I'd like to see better mock-ups for mobile farms. So, what I did was I started like building pallet planters, where essentially I was, growing on top of like, if I could find untreated, like just heat-treated lumber pallets, and then building up the sides of them about 6 inches, lining with landscape fabric, taking, really riffing on the milk crate idea, just lining with landscape fabric and filling the soil. At that point, I've got 12 square foot of growing space that's unimpeded. I don't have any plastic, milk crate sticking out every square foot. That was one way that we try to get around it. I've seen some growers will actually use like apple bins, like harvest bins, for containers as well. And those are perfectly mobile. You can pick them up on a pallet jack. At the end of the day, that's what I need. So I love ideas on that. So.
I don't know how other people feel about this. The two things two answers to two different questions. One, I think for 5 or 10 cents a crate, you can get RFID tags and tag every single crate and do like really super duper granular inventory stuff as much as you want.
Yeah.
Every crate can have like a whole trail of data behind it.
Okay.
I think that's reasonable for this application.
Yeah.
And then I think I have a drawing for a thing, like a square thing. You compress it into the dirt, push it down, and then like inject seeds in whatever pattern you wanted. So it doesn't need to be rolling because you have a square footprint. So just push it down, either activate some pressure or just add
like a vacuum seeder.
I don't know what that is.
Well, it's totally conventional how you in a greenhouse. It's like a production greenhouse to seed with a vacuum seeder. If you had a little teeny one, and I've seen people hack them, make little vacuum seeders out of really strong like Dressel. Anyway, strong vacuum cleaner. Dressel.
And it would emit like a single seed at a time?
Yeah. It's little teeny holes.
Okay.
It sucks the seeds onto the little hole, and then you release the seed off of the vacuum.
Now is it size specific, like, different size seeds?
Seed trays, plates, metal plates drilled for the seed.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
You can see it in action in my document.
Nice.
Have you ever tried to modify the crates themselves? Like, to make a complete row, you could just cut one side, the non-handle side, down like 3 inches, so then you'd have, and actually use that piece maybe to connect the two underneath like a subsoil layer, so then you could connect and make like cells with them, so you could have one full row. Or kind of, so you'd only have to cut out, you wouldn't affect the structural integrity or the mobility of it.
So, I guess the adaptation would be like what to do with the landscape fabric that comes up the sides all the time, and that if you rip it is pretty hard to, so what you're saying, cut out, so say like you had a box of 4, cut out the middles essentially.
So you have 4 sides, and you
Yeah.
just take one side and you cut it down like 3 inches,
Yeah.
and then before you put the landscape fabric in, you do that on, however many would fit on a pallet, and then face them all that same way. I guess maybe some of them you have to do 2 sides, but you still wouldn't affect the structural integrity. You just have a lower side, then lay your landscape fabric, and then you have one long row. And so you can take your cedar and just run through with the cedar that you already have,
Yeah.
and just do, rows.
Sounds like you're gonna have a breakout group.
Yeah. That sounds great. And then Jill.
Can you just talk a little bit more, quick history of like how the farm was established and how you were related to the restaurant?
Sure.
For
Yeah, it really started from, an idea from the owners of the restaurant. They've been interested in, starting a farm either upstate or in the city. And, they really were looking at this empty lot, and it was ugly. It has a big, gross gray construction wall there, and they saw a farm. And they went to the landlord, and this is no small thing. I mean, this is why I really, I think it's a major thing to talk about, is that the landlord was amenable. I mean, they liked the idea, they saw the value in it for themselves and also for their tenants and the public. And it was a partnership. I mean, they're both invested, both sides are invested in this project. So they actually, one of the owners of the restaurant, co-owners of the restaurant, is on the board of FarmHackNYC, and so he actually, I got connected through that. I was working with FarmHackNYC at the time on a food access project, and they said, hey, we need a farm manager, so I got hired on that way. I've been doing rooftop stuff around Brooklyn for 4 years before that, and this was like a perfect extension of what I was working on. So that's how I got involved.
as far as the farm to restaurant goes, though, would you say that like the chefs and owners of the restaurant are finding this as a money saving exercise?
Oh yeah, let me tell you about that. So everything that we harvest is tracked. Everything we track. I give them invoices for everything that I harvest based on market prices, because the idea is that these guys they go to Union Square and they buy their they'll buy their produce retail because they want to pick it out. They want to be able to select size and quality and all that kind of stuff. So this is a fine dining restaurant, right? They have the money to do that. So I'm tracking it based on a typical Union Square green market prices. I can't speak to the initial investment, but in terms of our operating costs, we were pretty close to breaking even this past year. So
Even with your salary as a farmer?
yeah.